My name is Sharon Danks, and I'm director of a nonprofit called Schoolyards America, and have been coordinating the National Outdoor Learning Initiative, which has been happening since June 2020, founded by Schoolyards America, the Lawrence Hall of Science, San Mateo County Office of Education, and 10 Strands. For those that are just joining us today for the first time, you are here in our community of practice for schools and districts moving learning outside, and this is a session that meets bi-weekly. This is meeting 35 of our collaborative conversation, and I host this meeting along with my colleague Laura McKenna from Schoolyards America, who will be speaking later in the meeting. And today we have some updates and an introduction for those who are new. We have some news about a new survey we're working on and a grant opportunity from our partners at Big Green. And then we'll have a guest presentation. Honored to have Sim Barrow speak today from Fayetteville Public Schools in Arkansas. And then we'll have time for breakout groups. So we're going to move quickly through the agenda so we have time to do everything and time for you to ask questions also about Sim's presentation after he presents. So just an overview for those who are joining us for the first time today. The National COVID-19 Outdoor Learning Initiative supports schools and districts around the country in their efforts to reopen safely and equitably, using outdoor spaces as strategic and cost-effective solutions to increase capacity and provide access to abundant fresh air. And our overall goal is to improve outcomes for learning and mental and physical health and happiness for kids and adults. And we're doing this because being outside is a way to reduce virus transmission during the pandemic. Outdoor areas have more space around when you're trying to keep 6 feet apart, and classes can be placed next to hands-on resources, and it's really being outside improves access to nature, which has great health benefits as well. This is a solution that we're encouraging schools and districts to do either could be on a small scale, or entire schools and districts taking lunch outdoors or programs outdoors. And there's many different ways to go outside. Overall, we're hoping that schools and districts can see this as a new plan A that would be something that would help you to stay open once you have opened, and to add another layer of insurance to the plans that you already have to keep kids safe during the pandemic. One other layer of protection is being outside. And when possible, investing now in outdoor learning supplies that you can use in the future for the long term. This initiative centers equity. So we're trying to make sure schools can stay open, because that's the place where all students can connect most efficiently with resources and teachers. And we're also thinking about outdoor clothing as a piece of the infrastructure for outdoor learning, so all kids will be equally warm and dry as the seasons change. This initiative, although it was founded by 4 organizations, had about 20 or more partners helping us lead working groups who were fabulously helpful, and several hundred amazing people who volunteered to help contribute their expertise, and funders who helped us to keep the backbone of this organization, this collaborative, together. We appreciate everyone's help. And together we produced a library that we hope, if you haven't seen, that you'll check out. It has about 150 resources written by the wider group of experts from all over the country on topics related to learning and health and creating the spaces you might need. And hope you will look at it. In particular, there's a chapter about outdoor meals at school. This is a time that's been in the news a lot lately. It's the time at school of the day when people have their masks off, so particularly important to go outside. And if you're wondering how your district can get started with that, please check out our chapter. We also have a wonderful toolkit that Lauren helped to bring together, and it is a toolkit for schools that are looking for where to start in this vast library. It leads by piece, step by step, to help to get started outdoors. Our meetings for this community of practice are recorded, as we're doing today, and the recordings are often put up on the website so you can look at them later and see different examples from around the country. I encourage you to look at past recordings. We have an online social media campaign that we'd love your help in forwarding. You'll see in our Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram accounts where we're highlighting points that we'd love to share. A quote from the U.S. Department of Education about it being important to hold classes, activities, meals outdoors when safe and feasible. We'll be adding more as well. We're happy to see the head of education for California, Tony Thurmond, also vocal in his support for outdoor learning before, during, and after the pandemic, which is great to see our politicians getting involved as well. And also love your help on a new national outdoor learning survey that we have just launched this week or last week. And it's a way to understand more about what's been happening around the country. We want to know both about what's been working well for people and where the challenges are so that the field can help alleviate the challenges in the future. And so we hope you'll participate and tell us about your experience. There are different questions for teachers and for school principals, district staff, others from other educational institutions, designers. We'd like to hear from everyone. We hope you'll participate. We're going to run the survey through November 1st. For anyone who participates, you'll be entered in a drawing. We have 10 free books that relate to green schoolyards and nature play that we're going to be giving away as drawing prizes for those who have participated. And then for districts, we also have a special grand prize for those who are able to fill out the survey. We have 3 2-hour consultations that Green Schoolyards America staff are offering as a free prize service for those for school districts, specifically at district scale planning. If you'd like some advice or to have us lend an ear to your plans and give you some feedback, we will happily contribute our time and hope that you'll take your time to fill out the survey. And we would greatly appreciate it if you could help us get the word out. If you know schools or districts that have been doing outdoor learning, to just find out what everyone's doing and how many kids, answer the question, how many kids in schools got outside this year? And so I'd like to introduce my colleague, Laura Thompson from Big Green, who has an exciting new grant program to talk about. And I'll turn it over to Laura.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sharon. Hi, everyone. Great to be here today and to speak with you all briefly. I just wanted to announce a program that our organization, Big Green, has put out into the world over the past couple of weeks. Big Green is a national nonprofit organization that creates healthy places where kids can learn and grow. And we had the very exciting opportunity to announce this grant that we're calling Big Green Jumpstart Outdoor Learning in order to accelerate outdoor learning in schools this fall. It's a rapid grant opportunity. So far we have 2 rounds. We are announcing very soon a 3rd round, which is great that I'm able to confirm there'll be a 3rd round of the grant. And the idea is to get money into the hands of schools and educators at schools so that they can bring kids outside. We have about 1,000 grants to give out of $2,000 each for schools around the country. I'll note that these grants need to go directly to schools, and those schools need to have a nonprofit status. So because we are a nonprofit, we can only disperse funds to other nonprofits. So if you are a private school, you will need to be a nonprofit private school. And then, of course, public schools and public charter schools qualify as well. We've had a lot of questions about whether or not nonprofit organizations that work with schools are able to apply. Those nonprofits are able to support the applications, but we need to have a school representative be the primary applicant. This is because we are trying to really increase buy-in in schools across the country and have someone directly there that we are in touch with and can work with. The money can really be used for a lot of different things. The idea is to get kids outside as soon as possible. So if you need to support stipends for staff to be outside with kids during lunchtime, for example, or if you need to buy instructional supplies or seating for kids to sit outside, these are all great uses of the grant money. The only thing that is an absolute no is political or religious expenditures. Those are our no's, but everything else is pretty much fair game. We had our first round started last week, and applications for that round are due tomorrow. Our next round is opening tomorrow, September 15th, and applications for that round will be due September 22nd, so the following Wednesday, and then we'll be opening our 3rd round. So we encourage folks to apply. In order to apply, you need to attend information session webinar. Our next ones are tomorrow. Thank you, Sharon, for adding them to these slides, or this slide. Our next one is tomorrow, September 15th, from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern, or at 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern. We need to have someone that is from the school applying attend that webinar. And after you attend the webinar, you will be sent the application. it is a simple application. It is not meant to take a lot of time. We know folks are busy and we want to be cognizant of that. So it's really meant to not be a burden to schools. So we would love if folks could share this announcement widely. We've been trying to share on social and with our networks, but the more is $2,000 per school or $2,000 per teacher. It is $2,000 per school at this time. So we are encouraging different schools to apply so that we can get the money out to different schools. Yeah. No worries. Are there any other questions before I kick it back over to Sharon? Is there a way to find out if schools in our districts have applied and received? That is a wonderful question. I'll see if we can make it public who the grants went out to. I have to see if that's something we're able to do at this time. We haven't yet created a forum to be able to see that, but that's something I can look into. You can attend as a parent volunteer, but there also needs to be a representative from the school as well at the webinar. So you can support the application, but we do need to have a school representative there. Can we stipend teachers? So the money can be used for stipends for teachers if additional time is needed in their day to be able to take kids outside or any other staff members. The money can go towards staffing. Christian schools, yes, can apply. It's just we don't want the money to go towards, for example, like buying prayer books, I guess maybe would be a good example. Like it would be preferable, like, wonderful if you want to pray out in the garden, but maybe the money goes towards like seat cushions for kids to sit on for your classes. So it can go towards Christian schools. It's just the idea is it's not meant to drive towards one religious belief or another, is I guess what I'm trying to get at. And then someone else asked, with a focus on outdoor learning, I'd like to be able to put out media on the campuses that have gotten a Jumpstart grant. Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'll follow up with our team and see if there's a way that we can announce those publicly. And so that's something that you'd be able to share as well. So I will follow up on that. And as soon as we have that information, we'll post it on our website, which is biggreen.org/jumpstart. I'll put that in the chat as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Laura. Really appreciate that. It's so exciting that you're offering those grants through Big Green and hope that everyone will apply for them. And thank you for sharing the information. And now I'll turn it over to Lauren, who will tell us about our speaker and welcome our speaker.
Yes, thanks everyone for coming to hear from Sim Barrow today. We're really excited to have him. He is calling in from Fayetteville Public Schools in Fayetteville, Arkansas. He's the environmental science coordinator for the district, where he coordinates and supports environmental education and sustainability initiatives at their schools. He also leads outdoor science field days for elementary and high school students at Lake Fayetteville Environmental Studies Center, one of the longest running municipal school environmental education facilities in the country. His focus is to apply student-centered learning strategies that achieve meaningful, rigorous, and equitable outdoor learning experiences for all students. Before working with the school district in Fayetteville, he worked with the Northwest Arkansas Land Trust as their communications and development coordinator and led the outreach and education efforts there. His first foray in environmental education was as a cave guide at Blanchard Springs Caverns near Mountain View, Arkansas. He has a degree in fisheries and wildlife biology from Arkansas Tech and a master's in science and entomology from the University of Arkansas. And I also want to note that Sim was an early volunteer with the National COVID-19 Outdoor Learning Initiative. He was helping the outdoor infrastructure group way back. He helped author a really cool resource on dealing with pests. I guess you could say pests or just insects, other critters in our community, especially if you're doing outdoor learning. So I'll drop that article in the chat, but without further ado, welcome, Sim. We're happy to have you here. We're lucky to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Lauren, and for Sharon, for putting this all together. Everyone, it's so great to see you all here today. I have been involved in the initiative, but it's been a long time since I've been able to make it to one of these working group meetings. And so I'm really glad to be circling back and seeing you all. I'm going to pull up my screen here, make sure that I am sharing correctly. There we go. So again, it's great to be here. I kind of wanted to set the stage a little bit because, I'm speaking as a staff member at a public school district, but I recognize that my role as an environmental science coordinator is a little bit of an outlier. So for today, I just hope to share some lessons learned about, like what the last 18 months has looked like for our district and what we've been able to achieve and some of the lessons learned. So hopefully you'll take away some things that you might find relevant for your situation, whether you're a public school district or you are someone from a school, or maybe a parent, volunteer, nonprofit supporter. I hope this will be helpful for you. So a little bit of getting our bearings. Fayetteville School District is in the northwest corner of the state. It is one of the fastest growing regions in the country. In fact, Fayetteville is ranked as the #4 best place to live by US News and World Report, I believe. And we've been highly ranked there for a long time. We're also the home of the main campus for our land grant, the University of Arkansas. And our district is about, medium size, probably on the national level, but for us here in Arkansas, we're a relatively large school district with 10,000 students and 16 schools. We're in the Ozark Mountains physiographic region of the state, so we have gently sloping hills and plateaus, and also just to acknowledge that we are on the ancestral lands of the Osage, Caddo, and Quapaw, as well as we have one of the routes for the Trail of Tears goes through our area. In fact, I lead field trips along the old wagon route where those displaced people were moved into Oklahoma forcibly. So just want to acknowledge some of that history. So as you probably picked up in my introduction, I've got probably the best job in the entire world. For me especially, I have the great privilege of leading field trips and working directly with students, but I also get to work at the administrative level, district-wide, working and supporting sustainability initiatives and school gardens. So all the best parts of sustainability and school gardens and environmental education come to me, which is really great. But as you can imagine, when March of 2020 came upon us, everything about my role changed. And so field trips were canceled. After school clubs, sustainability initiatives were put on hold. Even some of our best parent volunteers involved in our school gardens were prohibited from accessing them because of safety concerns. And so it was really presented ultimately a great opportunity for me to pivot to something that's been a real interest of mine and in the department as a whole, incorporating outdoor learning and pursuing that expansion in the schools. And so that's really where Green Schoolyards America became a catalyst for us at our district. Joining in June 2020 in the infrastructure working group and working on that article really got me, that was the activation energy that I needed to start to really think of that as a project that could happen in our district. And seeing what was possible from other schools was also really helpful for that. And so when August 2020 came, we resumed work at the schools. We opened back up and we offered multiple learning options for our students. They could learn entirely virtually. They could attend a hybrid class, which was in person for 2 days a week and virtual for 2 days a week, or they could be full-time, 5 days a week, traditional in-person learning. And so the students were back, our staff was back, but it looked entirely different from anything that's ever been done before. I'm sure that's an experience that all of you. So when that happened, I was able to utilize the resources that Lauren and Green Schoolyards America put together with some of these, this toolkit, and use the Campus Tool for Outdoor Classroom infrastructure assessment as a starting point for determining what were our opportunities. And from that, I applied for some funding from our local public education foundation to install some outdoor learning infrastructure. For that project, I asked for a whopping $190,000, and I am proud to say that I received funding in the amount of $11,500. So very small amount compared to what I asked for. Nonetheless, it was a really great start, and one of the highest grants that organization has offered in quite some time. And so with that funding, I began to start building our infrastructure. So again, the reason that I had asked for $190,000 is because I started by talking to our facilities leadership and asking about what this infrastructure could look like. And they basically told me that it needed to be maintenance-free, vandalism resistant, fireproof, and just overall extremely durable. And also we couldn't attach anything to the buildings just because it would have required permitting and engineering and all those things. So what we ended up with is coated metal, benches, and playground level shade structures was what we mostly applied for funding for. Because we didn't get the funding for that, we went a more flexible, portable, say mid-level cost route. And by the way, this grant project was to support the 5 highest need schools in the district. So our students with greater than 50% free and reduced lunch rate. And so there were really 3 components that we were able to purchase with those funds. And that includes stump circles, as you can see here. This is at Owl Creek Elementary School and Middle School. It's right by this beautiful wetland, and they have a hiking trail and a disc golf course right there on their campus. So already they're a school that embraces their campus as a resource for learning. They didn't really have any seating outside of the building. So these stump circles, this is one example of what those circles look like. I have more pictures that I'll be sharing. We also purchased portable folding seats that we purchased with. We actually were able to buy enough seats to provide 2 classes with seating outdoors that they could take wherever there was an identified site, shade and sufficient distance from noise and things like that. And then I tried to provide some of the things that maybe a teacher might be really accustomed to having as a resource in their classroom, but make it portable. So we were able to purchase these outdoor learning kits. And as you can see, it included this folding dry erase board, some storage boxes that had some teaching supplies like markers and disinfectant spray and wipes. We also included a voice amplifier, a portable voice amplifier, which when you have a mask on and you're distancing, turned out to be an extremely valuable tool, and then a wagon to carry it on. So that's what that grant funded. So all of those 5 schools received enough outdoor learning supplies to take 2 classes outdoors. It was successful. I think the supplies were very well received. And in January, the foundation reached out and encouraged me to apply for a second grant to focus on one of the schools. And so just a quick cost breakdown, what that grant looked like. Here's just the broad strokes budget. We actually overspent a little bit. I think the stump seats cost a little bit more, and there were additional supplies that I purchased to support some of the stuff. This is kind of the big rocks of what we spent. And the stump seats were a great sort of win-win. A local tree service, they actually didn't have any means themselves to mulch any trees that were bigger than 15 inches in diameter, which is about the size that we wanted for our seats. So they would be sufficiently sized to offer seating. So instead of them having to pay another company to grind those trees, they just cut them into stumps for us and delivered them. So what we paid for was not the wood, not the stumps themselves, but for the staff time and the equipment costs. So we paid for their crew to come out and deliver the stumps essentially. So, again, when we talk about cost to impact, I think be able to serve 300 students and, 2 classes. That next round of work was at Ascot Elementary, our highest need school. And we actually worked with a a board member of the Fayetteville Public Education Foundation, a circular, kind of a council circle kind of a design. We were going to actually install concrete blocks on top, but the cost of concrete, as I'm sure many of you know now, is exorbitant right now, and it priced us out of the option. But by working with some companies that have existing relationships with the district, we were able to get this circular slab for probably less than half of what it would have cost if we just paid outright for it. And we'll be installing some benches around the outside perimeter, or just on the outside of the circle. So next month we'll be receiving those benches. We'll have 8 6-foot benches installed on the outer circle of that space, and that'll provide that central area as sort of a flexible learning environment where they can bring those portable teaching supplies out. You'll also notice it's right next to the school garden at that school, which is going to enable school garden club and school garden activities to have access to some seating. You might also notice there's not a whole lot of shade right here. The long-term goal is to install some sort of shade structure over that, maybe like a umbrella-shaped shade sail or something like that. But for now, once we get the seats there, I think it'll be a really great resource that we can wait to see students using. The other part of the initiative was to really understand what can we do to help create a system where our teachers view outdoor learning as kind of like what Sharon said, a plan A, the ideal environment. And so I was able to include a few questions in a survey that was going out to teachers back in October of 2020. And so I asked them, what are the main barriers to outdoor learning for you? And what do you need to be successful in outdoor learning? And this was the response from elementary teachers. I think I had about, maybe 50 or so responses from teachers on this question. And as you can see, the main reasons that I was given for why they don't teach outside more is, first, they just didn't have time for it. They were too busy to bring outdoor learning into their practice. The other one is that there was no suitable space. And it's really interesting because some of the schools have very suitable spaces that were underutilized for various reasons, whether it was an inconvenient location, or maybe teachers didn't know that it was available to them. So there was an awareness and a support that was needed. The other thing that I thought was really interesting is some teachers said that the outdoor learning wasn't relevant for them, because it wasn't the subject that they taught, or because they were at that time a virtual teacher, so they didn't have students in person, which is really interesting to me because obviously that illuminates some misconception about the role of outdoor learning, number one, and number two, a lack of awareness of the benefits of outdoor learning for their students. Because I know a lot of teachers were really concerned that many of their virtual learners were spending too much time in front of the screen. And so a lot of conversations were happening around this time about how do we get our students away from the screen and the spaces outdoors, whether it's in their neighborhood, around their apartments, or in a nearby park, were the places we were trying to encourage students to go. And so I think we know that it is pretty relevant regardless of your situation. But the question then was, if they build it, they will come? Maybe, but clearly there's additional support that's needed. And so towards the spring semester last year, I really began to focus on creating some teacher support, some professional development, some other resources that they could access to help them just, again, changing that paradigm, shifting our understanding about why do we teach outside, how do we teach outside, and some of the other logistical concerns that I was witnessing in our teacher population. So I don't have time to show all of it, but I did want to just a little excerpt from one of these interviews. So what I did is I interviewed several teachers in the district because I felt that teacher perspective was going to be really important, and helping them to see from a teacher's perspective how outdoor learning works for them. So I'll play this. Hopefully it will work for you all. I'm just going to go to just one of the questions we discussed. I have heard a lot of feedback from teachers
a big question that's asked is, what to teach when we bring our students outside. Can you talk a little bit about how what you've been teaching outside and what that looks like for you as a teacher?
Sure. Everything can be taught outside. Read-alouds is a very easy entree into outdoor learning. Just getting kids into a courtyard or out on the playground when it's empty, that's very easy. I've taught math. My whiteboard and chart tablet cart is on wheels. I'll just drag that outside, and I've done math lessons outside in the breezeway. I've also created games that we can play with math word problems. We've done science observations. We have journaled outside for writing.
So as you can see, as you can see, we cover a lot of topics really briefly. All the videos together, I pulled together into a professional training session, and that's a Moodle course. So just so you can kind of see what that looked like. Your school might not use Moodle. It's sort of an open source training platform. But essentially what I did is I took those interviews, supported them with some infographics like the one you saw on the slide, and then added some reflection questions that encourage teachers to think about what they could do in their own practice as a teacher to do more outdoor learning with their students. So that was one example of the support that we gave. I'm still kind of working on that and offering more opportunities to support teachers in that effort. Some of the really key resources that I found really helpful include resource library from Green Schoolyards America, and also Children in Nature Network, which I believe is a partner in this initiative, has a fantastic research library. And if you're needing help making a case for outdoor learning that is, relevant to your audience at your school, there's some really great research out there that supports that. And they're really great at just offering that with really objective and helpful breakdowns. And then one of the things, all while we were building this, since I wasn't doing field trips, I was going into the schools and hosting a lot of environmental education lessons on campus. So you can see here, one of my teachers is holding a spotted salamander. That was an alternative to field trips, yes, but the other thing in my strategy was, let me show teachers that this is possible. And so showing just some of the practices, modeling that student-centered learning approach through the lessons that I was giving was also kind of part of this bigger picture. So just some of the outcomes, and I don't want to linger too long on this meeting, but I will say what I've seen over the last 18 months is a growing movement around outdoor learning. And so one of the ways that is playing out for us here at Fayetteville School District is, first of all, we're seeing more students learning outside. When we have a nice day, what used to be a quiet campus is now becoming more and more populated. Our campus outside the classroom is growing. We're seeing more students outside. I'm meeting some teachers and staff that I've never met before that are extremely interested and passionate about this work and want to join the efforts. We have a growing coalition. We also have some administrative support. So what I mean by some, our top administrators put out a guide for returning to school this fall. And in that guide, there was a distinct statement saying to go outside when it's safe and feasible, kind of like the National Department of Education. There has not been any kind of top-down mandate that, yes, we need to see students outside or anything like that. But I'm starting to see the wheels turning around system-based change. Just a few stories quickly. Owl Creek Elementary, Brooke Buckley at Owl Creek, that teacher that was just interviewing, their fourth grade class reached out to me after their campus visit and mentioned that their students were so excited about their learning after my campus visit that they were making that into a reward for good behavior and good academic achievement. And so they literally started using outdoor learning with their students as a result of this work. In our middle school, you can see this picture here on the slide. That's from one of our middle schools. And I actually took this picture for a totally separate purpose. Looking back, it's a great example of how outdoor learning infrastructure, something as simple as stump circles, can really benefit the school as a whole. So while we were out there doing some work in their pollinated beds, one group of students was out there already, and they were doing independent work, just doing math problems on their own or in pairs. After about 10 minutes, they went back inside and another group came out. They were doing a mask break. So 5-minute, take your mask off and get some fresh air before returning inside for class. And 4 or 5 of those students in that class actually just went straight to the tree circle and started jumping up and down off of the stumps and trying to jump from stump to stump. So it's like a really good example of active play around the stumps. And then they went inside after a few minutes. And then the last group that came out before we left about an hour later was, I think, maybe a social studies class. And the teacher had the entire group sit down and led a formal lesson, a formal instruction lesson at this stump circle. So it's just a real picture of, these outdoor learning places, if they're designed well, can serve so many different purposes. And it was really cool to see. And then the last one is Monster Tree Service in Northwest Arkansas. That was the tree service that was delivering these stumps for us. And remember, as I mentioned at the beginning, we were paying for the staff time, but by spring, increasing interest, schools from outside that initial project were reaching out to me, asking for more stumps. And they ended up just giving them for free to us because one of their banks that they were applying for a loan was a parent of a student in one of our schools and heard about the work they were doing with these stumps. And actually, they think that community service they were doing ultimately led to them being approved for their business loan. And so that was kind of them benefiting from this work in our district, and a really good example, I think, of how business partnerships can really be a win-win. There's still a lot of work to be done, a lot of support. That is also going to be involved with some advocacy around ESSER funds, the American Recovery Plan, and then school gardens are part of this mix too. We received a grant, and we're hoping to use funding from that grant to develop curriculum and resources and training to bring more students outside, less about stump circles and more about raised beds, I would say. Some of the lessons learned, I just want to call out 2 really important ones because I'm over on my time. First is facilities leadership is a key partner in this work. I could not have been successful without their support. And so while they led me down a path I would not have gone, and oftentimes kind of priced me out of some of the work I wanted to do, they saved me a lot of pain in the back end, and I saved them a lot of pain, because what happens a lot of times is schools will work they'll go rogue and they'll do their own thing, and they'll develop infrastructure that is either not approved or to code, or facilities has to come in for a project that's already underway and undo that work. And so I was able to sit down with our associate superintendent and ask about a site, and they would say, well, actually, that's probably not going to be good because we're going to install a new HVAC unit in that very space. So you probably shouldn't build any picnic tables there. So even though sometimes it was a setback, they rarely ever told me no. They always just helped me to adjust my plan. And it takes time. I would just say, be patient with yourself if you're feeling like you're not making progress. I definitely feel like I wish there was more that we'd gotten done, but it's really great to be at a place now where we're starting to see those changes happen. And then the last thing I'll just say is partnerships have been the absolute linchpin for this. So everybody on this screen, whether it's the Public Ed Foundation, Nabholz is the construction company that probably more or less donated that slab. Crazy Creek sold their products at wholesale for us because we're a school. RTR Enterprises is our playground equipment supplier. They donated a $4,000 shade sale to Asbel for a spot in their playground area for outdoor learning. And so Rust-Oleum is going to hopefully be donating polyurethane so we can protect those stump seats and make them last a little bit longer. So everybody, it's just been amazing to see who has stepped up in this effort to help make it a success. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and open it up for questions.
Thank you so much, Sim. That was wonderful. We have time for a couple questions. And before we go on, I just want to include all of your links in the chat there. Those are just some of your programs. So a couple questions I'm seeing is, well, Karen just put it in the chat. How much wind, rain, cold did you deal with? And are there any solutions for not easy weather? Fabulous question.
That's a great question. And our main concerns in Arkansas during the summertime, like this time of year, we've had heat index in the over 100 degrees. We have massively high humidity. Our high is generally in the 90s, 95, 96. And so heat is a concern. And so that's where shade becomes really important. My approach for weather has just been to do what we can to broaden the margin of comfort. So this is like room temperature indoor setting. If we can just provide infrastructure that broadens it a little bit and just opens up more options. I think Sharon mentioned about clothing. That's been another thing, is just really helping to provide great warm clothing for the winter time. So this picture here, or you probably can't see it now, but we did a lot of work in the winter time. It rarely gets below freezing, but we had a bit of a, Arctic blast this February that was extremely cold. It got down to 9 degrees for us. So yeah, all I can say to winter is check out the Green Schoolyards library. They have some resources for that. And then also think about not how do we protect against all weather, but just how do we broaden that margin where we can provide that comfort, because cold kids don't learn as well. Hot kids don't learn as well. Thirsty kids don't learn as well.
Absolutely. Someone was asking about the teacher kits. Do you have a link for that?
So the teacher kits, that was,
or what was
in it? Yeah. So if you go to Amazon, actually, you know what? Maybe I can do that. I don't have it ready, but I can maybe put together an Amazon list, and maybe that can be a starting point. I bought most stuff from local for us. Sam's Club, ours, our home office. So if you're shopping local, go to Walmart in Northwest Arkansas. But yeah, that's a good point, Laura. Good use of Jumpstart grant. I will say the folding whiteboards have been more cumbersome, I think, than they were worth. So I would probably lean towards individual whiteboard packs for clipboards. And that would be probably a good alternative to those big big funky whiteboards.
And let's see, maybe one more question. Gosh, there's so many good questions. So many good questions.
Sorry, guys, I had to get through it.
Yeah. So someone was asking about children and helping maintaining outdoor learning spaces, such as raking leaves and other things like that. That's actually a really good question about maintenance and sense of responsibility and a sense of ownership.
Mm-hmm. I will say from our district's perspective, they're extremely shorthanded in almost every student support services department, whether it's custodian, cafeteria, or maintenance. And again, if you talk to your facilities people, they're going to be thinking of those things. When you say, hey, we want to put some picnic tables in this area, they're going to say, that's going to be really hard to mow around. And so by having that discussion with them, that can help with getting in front of some of those challenges. We have school clubs to help with a lot of stuff, especially in the garden, but we're trying to make it to where our students can spend more time learning in those spaces and not make them free labor. But I absolutely agree that those are really great ways to build resilience, and give them some time to work with their hands is good. That's not a bad thing.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sim. And while you're thinking about that list of supplies, I know some people have questions about the Moodle program. So maybe that could sort of be tied along with that.
Absolutely. I can add a little info to that. I don't know if I can share the slides, but those are links. They're active links in the slideshow. So you're welcome to check out the videos. I'll see if the Moodle link is something you can do.
Yeah. And whenever we post this recording, we'll be sure to include any relevant links that you have or additional ones. And to be continued, we are also beginning a case study with Sim. So we'll include lots of resources then. All right, well, thank you so much for coming today, everyone. And big thank you, of course, to Sim and the folks at Big Green. We would love for you all to join us next time on September 28th. We'll hear from Fayetteville Public Schools in Massachusetts. And then the following meeting, 2 weeks from then, we'll hear from Boulder Valley School District, and they're going to share an update with how they are doing with their outdoor learning after a year. So thanks, everyone. Take care. See you next time.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you, Sim, for the fabulous presentation.